Hi YouTubers, I'm back on the deck again. It's a beautiful summer day, so I thought I'd do some videos for you from back on the deck, and doing it early in the year instead of late in the year. Last fall I did a trade with another YouTuber, bert8838, I think his account name is, and I sent him some albums that are heavier rock that I'm not a huge heavy metal or hard rock fan. So I hope he appreciated them. I think he did. And he sent me some albums that I think are pretty interesting. I like them. So I'll show you what they are here. The first is David Sanborn. And it's on Warner Brothers. I think it's his first solo album, and he's kind of a studio saxophone player. He's played in all kinds of stuff, starting out in the 1970s. And these came from a radio station. The radio station promo copies. The radio station is KJLH, which I think is in Los Angeles. This is Lani Hall. Lani Hall is most famous for a couple things. She was the wife, maybe still is, the wife of Herb Alpert. And she was also one of the female voices in Sergio Mendes in Brazil, '66, and some of the later incarnations of Sergio Mendes, who had a lot of really cool bossa nova type tunes back in the 1960s, early 70s. This is a group I know nothing about. It's I don't know if it's I don't know how you categorize it, funk R&B. Mandrill. It's called New Worlds. This is a promo copy album, like a radio station DJ copy, special jazz sampler for radio and in-store play. It's Warner artists, kind of jazz artists. Jaco Pastorius is on this. John McLaughlin. It's called Appetizers. Now, the next three are the ones that I'd asked Bert about. He showed these in one of his videos, and it's David Axelrod. Now, David Axelrod has a bit of a cult following. I think his records have been sampled by people going back maybe 15 or 20 years. This album is called Songs of Innocence, and it's David Axelrod's compositions and arrangements. Now, David Axelrod has had a pretty interesting career going back into the late 1950s, primarily in the 60s and the 70s. Axelrod, composer, arranger, particularly in the jazz field, and producer. He's produced people like Cannonball Adderley, Nancy Wilson. I think the Cannonball Adderley that he produced was Mercy, 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 that was covered, the song was covered by the Buckinghams later on. And if you see David McCallum albums from the 1960s on Capitol Records, and Axelrod worked on Capitol Records primarily in the 1960s. He arranged and produced those David McCallum albums, and they're really good. Easy listening, but they're really good. But he also stepped out with the Electric Prunes. This is the third Electric Prunes album, Mass in F minor, and it's composed, arranged by David Axelrod. Their follow-up album, Release of an Oath, Electric Prunes, same thing. And the musicians that he used were people like the Wrecking Crew. It wasn't really the Electric Prunes that were playing on these. It was people like Carol Kay on bass, Howard Roberts on guitar, Earl Palmer on drums. Was one of his favorite drummers in all his recordings in the late 60s and early 70s. So this Songs of Innocence, this is not an original copy, it's actually a reissue. The original album came out late 60s, probably 68 or 69. I think there was an album, Songs of Experience, too, and it's based on the works of William Blake, the British poet, whatever, back in, what, the 1800s or whatever. And this is a cool find. It's an album I like quite a lot. Axelrod went over to Fantasy Records in the 1970s. This is an album called Heavy Axe. this is another album that Axelrod produced that I really, really like. Hampton Hawes, Northern Windows. It's Hampton Hawes keyboard player, jazz keyboard player, and he's one of Miles Davis's favorite players apparently. And on this album it has Carol Kay on bass and Spider Webb on drums. It's a really, really good keyboard kind of jazz album, although it crosses over into pop too. It was produced by David Axelrod in 1974. And this is another David Axelrod album called Marchin'. This one's on MCA Records though, not Fantasy. And something interesting about this one, like KJLH. And it says, to Lawrence Tanner, best wishes in the 80s. Amani and Stan for David Axelrod. And apparently Lawrence Tanner was a disc jockey in Los Angeles, but later on, and perhaps even now, he's the announcer for the Los Angeles Lakers basketball team, perhaps. I don't know much about about American basketball, but apparently this Lawrence Tanner is, or has been, the announcer for the Lakers. Thanks for watching, everyone, and thanks to Bert for sending some of these albums, especially the Axelrod. Thanks, Bert.